Hello, I'm Ollie and this is CriminOlly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, Grady Hendrix enters his Stephen King era with Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. I hate it when reviewers compare horror authors to Stephen King. I think it's a really lazy shorthand that basically just means this was a horror book and I think it's quite good. I've read a couple of books recently that did it and it really annoyed me with those. So the first one was Apartment 16 by Adam Neville, which had a blurb on the cover saying Adam Neville is Britain's answer to Stephen King. And then the other one was The Gathering by C.J. Tudor, which had a blurb on the cover saying that C.J. Tudor is Britain's female answer to Stephen King. Both of those are just lazy. Both books are great. I really enjoyed both of those books. I think they're both really good horror books, but I don't think they feel like Stephen King books. This book, Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix, definitely feels like a Stephen King book. And that's both a good and a bad thing. So it has the strengths of Stephen King's best books, but also some of the weaknesses of his books. So I'll talk about why I think that is in a moment. But first, let me just tell you what it's about. So this is a book set in the early 70s, before Roe versus Wade, the law that legalised abortion, passed in the US. And it's about a school where young women, teenage girls who become pregnant are sent to basically stay out the course of their pregnancy. So they stay there whilst they are pregnant. At the end of their stay, they have their babies and their babies are taken away and given up for adoption. The home in this case is in Florida, but there were, this is based on, on truth. There were loads of homes like this across the US before abortion became legal. And it's very timely, clearly, that this book comes out now when the Supreme Court has just overturned Roe versus Wade. So that part of the book is really, really powerful. You follow one young girl in particular who, at the start of the book, is in a car with her dad. You don't know where they're going, and it ends up that he is taking her to this home and just leaves her there. And it's a very, very emotional and involving entrance to the book. It works very, very well. It really, really, really sucked me in as a reader. So as this young girl, stays in the home, she meets the other girls who are staying there and forms, friendships with some of them, rivalries with some of them. There's a headmistress character who's very overbearing and very unpleasant at times as well, who kind of rules the home with an iron fist. So you get this kind of setup of this small, strange community where girls from, very different backgrounds are brought together and have to live together. And then into that, Grady Hendrix introduces, as you would expect, a horror element. So in this case, it's the fact that the girls, through meeting this older woman who runs a library van, get exposed to witchcraft and start to understand that witchcraft is a real thing, and start trying to use witchcraft to improve their lives, basically, and to get revenge on people within the home who have abused them in some way. So it's an interesting setup. So why do I think it's like a Stephen King book? Well, for a number of reasons. So first one is it's too long. It's nearly 500 pages long, and I don't think it needed to be as long as it is. The second thing is it does something that King does a lot in his books, which is take two different stories and kind of mash them together. And when King does that really, really well, his books are great. I think The Shining is an example of a book of his that does that and does it brilliantly. So you both get the story of this haunted hotel, and you also get the story of this haunted writer, basically, this alcoholic writer. And those two things are brought together into a great book. Well, when King doesn't do it as well, it can feel a little bit clumsy. So in this book, I think the two stories are the story of this home, the story of these girls who've been taken away from their families at a terribly traumatic time in their lives and are put together and form friendships with each other. The other part of the story is the horror part of the story, the witchcraft part of the story. And I didn't feel like those two elements were perfectly combined at all points in these books. At times he does it really, really well, but it does feel like the two halves of the story, if you like, are kind of in competition with each other at times. I definitely felt like the more kind of general fiction, if you like, part of the story was better handled. So the story of these girls and the experiences that they are going through, I thought was really, really well done. The horror element I didn't feel was as well done. I thought that the kind of plotting of that part didn't work perfectly at times. So yeah, that's another thing that felt very much like Stephen King to me. And then the other one is there's, the central theme of this book is the abuse of power. So the abuse of power both by the people who have power within the home, so the headmistress, and also a doctor character there, but also just the abuse of power by the state. So the fact that the state has enacted laws that are, impacting terribly the lives of these young women, but not impacting at all the lives of the young men who were also involved in, the pregnancy that has led these women to be taken to the home. So it's that abuse of power is really, really central to this book, and it's a theme that King uses again and again in his work. So this to me felt very much like a Stephen King book. I would also say the ending isn't perfect, so particularly the ending of like the horror part of the book, if you like, I didn't feel worked that well. It's okay, it's fine, but it's not brilliant. The ending of the other side of the book, this emotional story of these young women going through a terrible time, I thought was brilliantly done. I'm not ashamed to say I cried at the end of this book. I thought the kind of emotional climax of this book was just beautiful, fantastically well done, and that's the real strength of this book. That's the power of this book. So for all my criticisms of it, I do think it's a really, really good book. It's very, very emotional. It's very powerful. You really do get sucked into the lives of these young women, their friendships, their rivalries and things like that, and it's very enjoyable to spend time with him. Even though it's traumatic at times, you really do get swept along by the characters and by the things they are going through. So overall, I thought this was a really, really good book, but it definitely has some flaws. I think it's a really good book. I don't necessarily think it's a really good horror novel, but I definitely recommend you read it. I really did. It had an impact on me. It really did. I think at times it's beautifully done. It's just not all the elements of it work perfectly. So hope you found that interesting. Do let me know in the comments if you're a Grady Hendrix fan. Let me know your favourite book by him. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.